Zoning Hearing Board meeting. If you care to join us, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I believe we are starting today with appeal number 3077, asking for an extension of time for obtaining a permit. Is anyone here for the applicant?
My name is Joseph. Can you hear me, or do you want me on the?
Yeah, on the mic, please, yes.
That's fine.
Yeah, swear him in. There may be testimony.
I do. Joseph Kravitz. I'd like to give you a quick overview. I am the project manager for our building company, Builder Direct Homes, which is owned 100% by my wife for various reasons legally. That being said, I'm coming tonight with an overview. I have a stormwater grading permit from the Township, and that will expire on November 5th of 2022. And I'm here tonight on the actual necessity to provide the building drawings for the home itself to be presented to the building inspectors and officials for review. I have in my hand here a very short letterhead from our architect out of Paoli, McIntyre and Capron, fairly well known in the area. And I'll just read what he stated. To Radnor Township Building and Planning Department, to whom it may concern, in regard to Builder Direct Homes Villanova model, the plans have been under review by our structural engineer, and we will have the information back to our office soon. We anticipate that we will have the permit drawings completed within 2 weeks from today's date. This was dated July 8th. It's 2 weeks. But they tell me this morning that due to staffing vacations, it should be done very shortly. And with the grading permit giving me a little buyer's time, I'm asking that you would also give me that extension necessary. But we do plan with the drawings themselves. They are all here in smaller form.
Joseph, can I excuse me? Can you pass the letter up? We'll just take a quick look
Sure.
at it. Turn back.
Mr. Chairman, when does the extension that we previously
Well, I
granted on
was
this
going
run?
to ask a couple questions.
Yeah.
First of all, Joseph, what's your connection with the applicant, Mark
Well,
Hero Properties?
that's another issue I wanted to present after we went through this.
Well, let's talk about
There-
that first.
That's fine. I have
Yeah.
been asking legally if someone can look at it. The applicant, Marqueer Properties, was the original seller of the ground to us. Our contract initially was that we were to apply for these permits, but for whatever reason, paperwork, Marqueer's name was on it. We went into a lawsuit with him. We were granted a Chester County, it was settled. And make a long story short, we own the property. We always have owned it since last November, debt-free. And we truly, not Marqueer, are the applicants of all this stuff. And I'm a little upset with the fact that every time something happens from a township perspective, he's being emailed that what's going on. He's been paid, we own it outright, and I'd like to see what's possible with my permitting to be sure that he's out of the chain of communication.
What was the original application for? What was the relief that was granted by the zoning board? And what was the date of that?
Yes. While I had the grading permit in my name, he chose in his name to get a variance. It was granted.
And do you know the date?
That variance was around November of last year in his name, granted. Then we went to settlement and purchased the property, and we designed the blueprint here for the 46 length or width of the home.
Right.
And our grading permits, which were also applied to us, were done for that 46 width home as well.
Okay. Well, I think if the original relief was granted in November, you have a 6-month period.
Correct. And in April of this past year, we had that already extended once. What initially was extended was in April, we were given a 3-month extension.
Okay.
And I now have, and I'll read this. You've been granted, this is the township,
Okay.
you've been granted a 6-month extension for the permit. Please note that the work must start prior to the new expiration day of November 5th, 2022. Bottom line is, we're ready to go for the building permit. We've got the grading permit already. And according to that letter that was passed around, I expect to be bringing that in a blink of the eyes.
Well, if, I don't have the original extension request in front of me, unfortunately. Kevin, do we have that?
This
Okay.
application was last in front of this board at April 21st meeting, and at which point you granted a 90-day extension. I believe the realtor may have been representing
Correct.
the project at the time. There was some concern since a previous 6-month extension had been granted. The board was a little concerned of just kicking the can down
Sure.
the road, so that's why you did a 90-day.
Sure. And so, all right, so we did 90 days, and what's the end date on that? Sometime-
It's right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been Thursday, last Thursday's meeting, but because we had too many, this ended up getting pushed
Okay.
to tonight's meeting.
I understand. I think you expect these plans any day now, is that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, they're a noteworthy firm. They know my circumstance. And the structural, they would have been done in the past 3 weeks, but the structural engineer asked me, because of a finished basement, about changing some structural steel. And it's interesting, as you well know, I assume, that when an architect designs something, even residential, it now has to go for a second seal to a structural engineer to review the architect's work. So they had to sub it out to their structural engineer, which caused somewhat of a delay. But all I can tell you is what you see there, and that's what they told me, that I should have this. And I know for a fact, this Wednesday, which is today's Monday, they're supposed to be getting it back from the structural engineer to make the adjustments. That's all I know. And what I would be doing then immediately is bringing that drawing in for a building plan review.
Okay, so if we agreed to give you 30 days, that would be sufficient? I mean, we're at 9 months out now. I don't wanna go too far out.
Is
Yeah.
30 days mean, frankly, the passing back of the drawing from your inspector?
The
asking-
issuance by the township of the permit.
I can't speak for your inspectors. All I know is this is a solid architect, and I don't know subjectively if there's something your inspector is gonna want revised. I'm just being honest with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Gus, do we need a vote on this, or we can just,
Yeah, I mean, you should have, there should be a vote.
okay.
And frankly, I'm requesting, not that I'm going near it,
Yeah.
but I do have the storm permit up till November, And I'm being told I cannot start my stormwater without the building permit. But I would say to you, it's incomparable for me to think, the moment that my architect hands these plans to your review inspector, that within 90 days, even with adjustments, but I think 30 days, because your guy, everyone's on these crazy schedules, and subjectively, he may say, look at something that the architect conflicts or.
Okay. All right, does anyone from the board have questions for the witness?
And this home is sold, by the way, to a family.
Got it, okay. Well, I'm going to make a motion that we grant a further extension of 60 days, because nothing happens in the month of August anyways. I'll need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, it passes. You got a 60-day extension. And that's, again, to get the permit, to actually get the permit issued.
Well, that's not from the date I submitted.
It's 60 days from today, right? That's-
Well, whatever the expiration date is on the old extension.
It would have been-
Yes.
All due respect, Mr. Nago, I'm just asking. I'm going to ask, how long can it sit on his table before he reviews it?
That's,
No,
I have
that is
nothing to do with
That is
that.
a concern. Just-
My concern is we gave you, your company, relief 9 months ago, and nothing's happened as far as,
That's not true.
nothing's happened regarding getting a building permit. It hasn't been issued. We've just granted you an additional 60 days. If you cannot do it in 60 days, that means you have to come back and ask
Fair
for a
enough,
further
fair
extension.
enough.
Yes.
All right,
And then we'll decide at
from
that
there.
point whether
Fine.
we grant it or not.
Very good.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application, appeal number 3140. The applicant, Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia, property located at 270 South Bryn Mawr Avenue and zoned PI planned institutional. The applicant requests the following relief: a special exception under section 280-68B to permit a senior living facility at the property. 2, a variance from section 280-69C to permit a building height of 48.1 feet where a maximum of 38 feet is permitted. 3, a variance from section 280-70B1 to permit a building length of 331.5 feet where the maximum of 160 feet is permitted. And 4, a variance from section 280-112D to permit portions of the proposed senior living facility to be located within steep slope areas. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Dan Rowley. I'm here tonight representing the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia. As was just mentioned in the read public notice, we submitted a zoning hearing board application on June 20th for the approval, or for the request for the stated relief. I won't go through all of it right now. We appeared in front of the Planning Commission on July 5th and presented our application. The Planning Commission voted 4-3 recommending denial of the application, and they stated a number of concerns. So since the July 5th Planning Commission, we took a step back. We're re-examining our plans. We're seeing what adjustments we can make to try to meet the concerns of the Planning Commission. So we are requesting a continuance of our zoning hearing board application to the September, I believe it's September 15th zoning hearing board. The plan would be to resubmit additional materials in mid-August, be in front of the Planning Commission again on, I believe, their September 5th agenda, and then be in front of the zoning hearing board here on September 15th.
And what happens if you don't get in front of the Planning Commission in September for whatever reason? Are you still going to be back here September 15th?
I think we could still proceed to the zoning hearing board, since we have been in front of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has voted on it. But I think our preference would be to be in front of the Planning Commission again to seek their recommendation.
Okay, I see. Okay, any questions from board members? Do we need to vote on a continuance? No, okay. So we'll see you September 15th, and good luck with the Planning Commission.
George, I think the applicant does need to extend all deadlines that we were otherwise
that
subject
is
to under the
absolutely true.
MPC.
Yes, we would agree to that, to the September 15th date.
Okay, understood. All right, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, the next application, Appeal 3141, the applicant AFC Fitness Radnor LLC, property located at 555 East Lancaster Avenue and Zone PB Plan Business. The applicant appeals the zoning officer's determination that the proposed signs exceed the 60-square-foot maximum size for wall signs in the PB district. Applicant contends that the signs meet the maximum sign area as defined in Code Section 280-116. In the alternative, a variance from Code Section 280-123B to allow a wall sign in excess of 60 square feet in area. In the alternative, a variance from Code Section 280-123B to allow a second wall sign for the applicant. A variance from Section 280-123A relating to total sign area permitted for this property if necessary. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm glad that we had a little bit of a continuance here. So
Yeah, so we won't be
this
here
will be
all
a
night.
shorter night for all of us, I hope.
Yes,
Yeah, my name is Daniel Koval, C-O-V-A-L. I'm an attorney. I represent the applicant, AFC Fitness Radnor LLC. And I have exhibits. I can hand up sets to everyone, and then maybe that's the easiest way to do this. And I have only one marked copy of the plan, but I have other exhibits, so maybe if I may, I could do that.
yeah. Are these materials that aren't included in our existing package? Or-
I think they are included, or some of them are included, or most of them, but I have better copies anyhow.
I got it, okay.
And I'm sorry, I only have 5 sets, so.
That's too bad.
And Mr. Chairman, is anyone appearing for the township in this matter?
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening to the zoning hearing board. Will Ettinger, I'm appearing on behalf of Radnor Township Board of Commissioners. We are in opposition to just the determination tonight, but that said, we defer to the zoning hearing board for the determination of the variance conditions in this application.
You're in opposition to the application?
To the application, as far as the determination goes, there's separate forms of relief that the applicant has requested.
Yep.
The applicant's requested 2 forms of relief. One, the determination of the zoning officer, and the second being a variance. The township is in opposition to the applicant's proposed interpretation that the determination of the zoning hearing,
Got it.
the zoning officer. So we're kind of in a partitioned opposition.
Understood.
So what you're saying is, everybody can leave happy tonight?
I'll leave that up to you all.
Okay.
I'm going to have to take back one of those sets if I may, because I got one short. And these are. We're relying on you, George.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. So,
Let's mark some exhibits here. We'll start with the application. Is it A1, does that work? And let me see the exhibits. Daniel, this
I had the marked.
large survey is the same as the small one that was in our package?
It is, yes, it is.
Okay. We'll be referring to this, either the large or small copy as A2. And I think we'll go, these are, looks like the same that are in your package.
It would be, I have the deed as a, deed would be number 2, or maybe that would be, I don't know if we need that or not.
No, let's just go with, we'll mark this A3, the pictures.
So we're going to design proposal conform the sign.
Yes. And as we go, if we need further, we'll do further. But
Thank you.
I think those are the main items for now.
Great, thanks a lot.
George, can I ask one more housekeeping question? Maybe we'll let you go at some point, Mr. Cool. Your Exhibit 3 was the letter from Brandywine.
Right.
It doesn't explicitly authorize appeal to the board. It speaks in terms of approval of this set of plans. I just want to make sure that we have the right.
I read it, frankly,
Yes.
glanced at it when I put it in the package because we were trying to get things filed, and I read it this morning, and I saw that same thing. I have Mr. Littman, who's the principal of AFC Fitness. They're a long-term lessee. We can supplement with another letter. The owner is well in favor of this application. They have no problem with it. They've cooperated with us, and they reviewed the sign package that we gave them, and they're okay with it. So if we need to supplement the record, we can do that or leave the hearing open or whatever at the
I
end.
think,
but
you know, it says approval of this package, which is the package we received. I thought,
I'm just asking the
yeah.
question.
Yeah, I saw that too, but I think we're okay. Okay, proceed.
Thank you. So the property is in a planned business PB district, and I'm sure you're all familiar with 555 East Lancaster Avenue. It's a large complex of buildings. And AFC is a fitness, owns and operates fitness centers. They have a fitness center in Ballackinwood. They have had others in the area. The fitness center in Ballackinwood is down by the river. It was called Aquahab, and now it's called AFC Fitness. Mr. Littman and his family have been in this business for a long, long time, and they run a very, it's a high class, but a very upscale type facility. In this facility, which they've leased, which is about 44,000 square feet, they will have not only a fitness facility, but a swimming pool, physical therapy, areas for different classes. They're going to have a cafe, and they anticipate having several thousand members. Plus, they also will be having people who come on an irregular basis to this facility in order to do physical therapy, to participate in other activities that are open to other people than the members. So they need signage to not only locate the building, but to identify it, locate their facility, but to identify it also. Because if you're familiar with this building, it's a huge building, and this is kind of in the back. And you really can't see the entrance until you get right up on it. You may be familiar, it was leased to Philadelphia Sporting Club, I believe. They had 2 signs on the building. What we're asking to do is really to orient the signs a little bit differently. One sign over the doorway to identify the facility, to identify the entrance, to have their logo and identification, and another smaller sign on the other side of a glass wall, so people who are coming around the side of the building can see it and know where the facility is and not have to drive all over the place, because it's a confusing group of buildings back there. So there will be 2 signs, and the first one over the main sign over the doorway will be as shown on the diagram. Now, we're asking for a variance for this sign, for the area of the sign, and the code permits one sign of up to 60 square feet in the PB district for this type of use. And the code also provides that in measuring the sign area shall be computed as a square or rectangle drawn at the outer limits of the sign face. That's the definition of sign face. So the township And you'll see from the sign, there are larger letters in the middle, and the township says, well, we have to square this out and take the entire area, calculate the entire area by squaring the sign, even though part of that will not be the actual sign. And are we appealing the determination of the zoning officer? Yes, only in the sense that we think it's a better way to look at it and say, let's measure each element of the sign and square it off. And if we do that, we come out pretty close to 60 square feet. I think we're a couple square feet over. If not, we ask for a variance. And you'll hear testimony from our sign designer as well as from Mr. Littman, the owner, that if this sign were a square, it probably would not require a variance, but it's just the design of the sign that requires it. And the alternative, we request a variance. There's a practical hardship. It's kind of difficult to see this site, difficult to find it, and we need a prominent sign in order to see it. We also ask for a variance for the second sign, and really the second sign, what you'll see is that the entrance of this space is offset. It's behind not the facade of the building, but it's behind it's offset from the parking area, and there's a wall to the side, and that wall kind of blocks the entrance from people coming from the north. And we're asking for approval for a second sign or a variance for a second sign, which is about 16 square feet if you square it out, just with the name of the business, so people can see that when they come in. So we'll have testimony on that. So I would call Matt Littman as a witness. And how do you?
Thank you. Good evening.
So, Mr. Littman, what's your relationship to AFC Fitness?
I'm the president and CEO.
And what does AFC Fitness do?
We provide health and fitness along with physical therapy classes for seniors, children, and people of the community.
And how long have you been in this business?
29 years.
And where are your other locations?
Bala Kinwood and Feasterville.
And have you had other locations over the years that you no longer operate?
Yes.
Okay. And you've been involved in this business basically your entire adult life and before then,
That's
correct?
correct, yes.
So, and AFC Fitness has entered into a lease with 555 LALP, the owner of this property, to lease space in the building. Is that correct?
Yes, 15 years.
Okay, 15-year term. How large a space are you leasing?
It's about 44,000 square feet, both floors.
All right. And tell the board what activities and what will be in the space that you're leasing.
So inside the space, we've spent a substantial amount of money redoing the old Philadelphia sports space. We have a group cycling. We have a mind-body yoga studio. We have a turf area for training, physical therapy. We have a cafe, locker rooms, sauna, workout space, cardio areas, main group fitness studio, etc.
And when do you anticipate opening?
Monday.
Okay. So you're ready to go. Why did you choose this location?
We loved this I've always loved this location, and when PSC went out of business, there was obviously COVID, but I really saw a void in this area for an upscale fitness center. And since we're not, big 800-pound gorilla national chain, and we have a location on the Lower Main Line, I felt it made a lot of sense to have one here so there could be reciprocity for the community. I live, in Bryn Mawr. I live 8 minutes from here, and I just really liked the opportunity.
And you presented the plan for the signs to the owner of the property, and they agreed to allow you to make this application?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that the space was previously used by another fitness club. Did they have signs on the building?
Yes.
What type of signage did they have?
They had a sign on where that wall juts out when you're coming around the north side, so you could see to continue going past, and then they had a sign on the other side, I guess if you're coming from the south side as well.
How many members do you anticipate for this facility?
Hopefully as many as we can, but let's say 3,000 or 4,000.
Okay, and will people, other members come, once a member knows where the facility is located, they know how to get there?
Sure, sure.
But will people other than members be coming on a regular basis?
Absolutely.
And can you describe why that happens and who will be there and
So
talk
other
more
than
about it?
regular special events that we would have, different community, whether it's charitable things or things we're doing with other businesses, we have swim lessons where parents will be coming and bringing their children. We have special senior classes. We have physical therapy where, you know, a patient may only be in for a month or 6 weeks and then they're gone. And then obviously we have a lot of people just coming to check out the space. Guests, people, you know, home from out of town, whatever it may be.
When you looked at this space, did you have a concern with people being able to find it?
Oh, yes.
And I'm going to show you the plan that we've marked as A2, and why don't we come up this way? This may be the easier way to do it. I'll put it here. So, in looking at the plan,
Mr. Chairman, pardon,
You're
for
gonna
the
be-
viewing public, we need to have that on camera.
High tech.
so I'll come around here and then we can talk this way.
Gotcha.
You know, there's a vast viewing audience at home, and we want to be
Better
mindful.
than the Real Housewives.
You may be joking, but that's probably pretty true. So I'm showing you A2, and I've outlined the building in yellow. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and for orientation, Lancaster Avenue was also outlined in yellow, and it's on the left side of the exhibit. We're looking
Correct.
at it upside down. Now, how would people get to this facility from, and before I get to that, the facility and the entrance is marked in blue on this exhibit. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so how would one get to this facility from Lancaster Avenue or from one of the other access points in this complex?
Well, considering this whole park, you can come in up here, you can come in on this entrance, or you can come in through this entrance. But I would think the majority of people would come in this way where the main pylon sign is.
Okay, and that's from Lancaster Avenue.
Correct.
And when we're talking about orientation, Fleming's Restaurant is in the other side of the building, is that correct?
Yes.
And there are other tenants in this building or other uses, is that
Yes.
right? How would someone find this location coming off Lancaster Avenue or coming from, say, Radnor Chester Road? How would they have to come to find
Well,
your
you would,
business?
if you came in on this entrance, you would come down here, then there's a little tiny location sign to go down to here, then there's another little tiny location sign that pushes you this way. If there's no sign here, you would probably park and just walk, thank you, walk into the main entrance right here where TD Bank is. So you never actually even make it around here. That's probably why PSC had that sign there. So for all the people coming in this building, they'll never see this because there would be no reason to park here. So by having it here, as you pass, you come around, then you see our main sign, and you'd pull into our parking lot.
Okay, now, when we talked, when I mentioned
And, sorry to interrupt, similar to here, if you're coming up through here,
from Radnor Chester Road.
you're never going to see that.
Okay. So the location, and we'll see more exhibits, but is the entrance to the facility set back from, say, the front or the side of the building?
Yes.
And can one see the entrance if they're approaching, and if they're approaching from the south in the way that you just shown?
No, you cannot.
Why not?
Well, where their main entrance is, there's a kind of like a courtyard, I guess, here.
Well, you're talking about the main entrance for
this
Ameritrade?
building.
Yeah, okay.
So you wouldn't see this.
And is there a wall there?
Yeah, there's a wall that comes out here.
Okay, and one of the signs is proposed to be on the south side of that wall. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. I'm going to show you what's been marked as A3, and I'm going to hand, the board has copies of this, but reverse it, got it.
Yes, so here's the wall. This is actually part of, I guess, their building design.
Okay,
that-
indicating on the left-hand side of the photo, that's the
Yeah,
first
so
page
this
of
blocks
Exhibit A3.
anybody coming up this way would never see around the corner.
Okay, so when we're talking about the wall, we're talking about this structure here, and
Yes.
then it's set back.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And the sign the second sign that we're talking about, that would be on the other side of that wall. is that
Yes,
correct?
so PSC had a sign here, which really didn't end here, but didn't make sense. Why, spending all this money and making this great place, why would I not want a sign over the front door?
And so the blank that we see on this side, on the other side of that blank is where the so-called second sign would be.
Correct.
Correct, okay, and that's a directional sign?
It's a directional sign.
Why did you contracted with
Foreman
Foreman
signs.
Signs to design the sign for this building? Had you worked with them before?
I had, and Brandywine had their own people, but it was important to me that the sign kind of went along with everything that we were doing there, and Brandywine was all for it, so we wanted to design something that, A, was visually pleasing and not just a big box, but also something that was directional, so as you're walking up, you can know where you're going.
You have a logo that you use in your business,
Yes.
and that's on the sign?
Uh-huh.
And AFC, is that also, you use the same lettering and same signage for the other
30
facilities?
years, yep.
Why not square off the sign?
Because it's, the building, it's a very pristine building, and Brandywine was very concerned, as was I, that this is an upscale place, and we want to, we don't want to look in like Jersey Mike's with a big box there. So it's a pleasing design, to me at least.
And will people be able to see the entrance and recognize it from the parking area?
Sure, and there'll also be, the people that have lived in the area will recognize the logo and, from pieces that we send out, so on and so forth.
Anything else? Do you have anything else? That's all I have for Mr. Littman. If the board has any questions?
All right, good evening, sir.
Hi.
My name is Will Edinger. I
Hey,
represent
Matt
the
Littman,
township on
nice
this.
to meet you.
Just one question or a series of questions. Using A3, the portion of the sign that's blank on the left there,
This?
that's correct, yes. Is that going to have lettering similar to the head-on?
No, that'll just be black.
Okay, so there will be no...
That's just fascia, that's not.
So no portion of the sign will extend above or below the background?
Yeah,
that
on
side?
this side, it's just black.
Just black as it's depicted right there?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I had.
And just while I have you here, and we're going to go over this with the sign consultant, but I'm drawing your attention to page 8 of 16. Does that page depict, on Exhibit A3, does that page depict the sign on the other side of that glass wall that we
Yes.
referred to? It says AFC Fitness.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, I call Martin Jacobson, please. It's Marty Jacobson.
State your full name and spelling. Martin, M-A-R-T-I-N, Jacobson, J-A-C-O-B-S-O-N.
Mr. Jacobson, what's your relationship to?
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay. What's your relationship to Foreman Signs?
I'm the owner,
And how long have you been in the sign business?
30 years.
So in your business, you design, fabricate, and install signs, is that right?
Yes.
And have you ever worked with Mr. Littman before in his business?
Yes.
Okay. So he's a good customer of yours?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Now, when your company designed the signs and did the sign package that we have in front of us as A3, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. What factors did you take into consideration in designing this particular sign? And we're referring to the sign that, first of all, that goes over the doorway.
Right. Well, on this one, I mean, like Matt had stated before, we just tried to, which we always do, we try to make it look aesthetically pleasing into the building, so it doesn't look like it was an afterthought. And I think that they did a pretty good job. We did on this one. That's what we designed, is to make it look like, you know, the top and the bottom, so it looks like there was window mullions there, so it's sort of part of the building, as opposed to one other option we talked about was, you know, making everything smaller and putting it in a rectangular box and then stacking, you know, AFC fitness underneath it and the logo under that. That would take us less square footage, but then you just have an ugly building, an ugly rectangular sign. It wouldn't be in that space. It would just be over the front door attached to the mullions of the building. So, you know, I don't think Matt liked that, and the landlord, you know, when we all sat down together, like, you know, we don't have a problem with this. We just wanted something that looks good and it has to be classy, because I forget what they told me this building cost, $40 million, some ridiculous amount of money, that they didn't want to, you know, throw something up there that they didn't approve.
So you basically wanted to continue the design, and grab that stick, please.
Oh, sure.
So you basically wanted to continue the design of the opposite wall across this space to make it look like it's a continuation of that, is that
Yes,
correct?
yes. And what was there before was pretty much just the opposite. They had this whole thing right here was red, and this is where they had the letters right there. That's what the other place had, which didn't really make much sense because, you know, the letters weren't over the door. So even when you came in from around here, you're looking at something over here, it makes more sense to put a sign over the door than on the side.
Did you, in designing the sign also, did you want to balance out the size of the sign in relation to the door, the length of the sign?
Yes, 100%. So we think it's well, you know, size-wise. I mean, you couldn't really make them much bigger. It just wouldn't look right.
Will these be internally illuminated, an internally illuminated sign?
Yes.
They're called channel?
Yep, channel letters, LED inside them, you know, so, you know, no kind of front light. Everything's backlit.
It's going to be illuminated but not throwing off light
Right,
beyond
exactly,
the
yeah.
boundaries of
Right.
the building?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to turn to page 2 of 16. There's actually 17 pages here. Does that page show the dimensions in general of the sign and its height?
Yes.
Okay, and the top of the sign is less than 15 feet from the ground level, correct?
Yes.
All right. And I'm going to show you page 3 of 16. That just shows the blank on the opposite wall that we talked about, correct?
Right.
The sign itself would be on the other side of that.
Right. This is the opposite side of on that glass wing wall is on the other side. That's pretty much the main problem they have, is that wing wall sticks out and you can't see their front door. So that's why they put that there. So to really have something on this side of that doesn't really do much good. So we're going to leave that blank, and we want to put the sign over the door.
It doesn't help to have a second sign on the inside there.
No.
When you have the main sign.
Right. And the gym that was there before, I mean, I guess they were there, what, 15 years? I mean, they pretty much, they had both these signs, except they just had their letters on the short wall as opposed to over the front door.
Your brother is in business with you in this company?
Yes.
Okay. And did he present this sign at the design review board? of the
Yes.
township?
And they were fine with it.
Okay. When I say this sign, I mean the sign package that was.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to show you page 4 of 16. Does this show the dimensions of the sign?
Yes, sir.
And the height of the letters, the AFC letters, you can see the dimensions up on the left, but they're about 3 feet 8 inches high.
Yes.
But what's the height of the rest of the sign, or from
The
top to
small letters, well, the fitness letters are 10 inches.
Mm-hmm. And the area within the sign itself, between the mullions?
What, square footage-wise? Well,
No, just-
22 feet total.
Okay, so it's 22 feet long, and I'm talking about the dimension that, from here to here, that's about 2 feet?
Right. Yep, about 2 feet.
So aside from the letters, the AFC letters being high, if you take 22 by 2, you come out with 44 square feet, correct?
Yes.
And there's some additional letters, additional size with the AFC. Now, on the next page, you calculated the square footage, and how did you make that calculation, come to a square footage of 36.9 square feet?
The original way we calculated
Yeah,
it?
mhm.
Well, the original way we put rectangles around all the letters. So if you take each rectangle around that, around this, and around that, that's how we came up with that.
Okay.
As opposed to, like, there's a couple of different ways, as opposed, the actual whole, and it's all different with every municipality and township. Some let you square off the letters, some say, no, we're taking the whole background and considering that all as square footage.
So my understanding is the townships calculated this by taking the bottom AFC and
Yes.
squaring that off, so it takes.
It's way bigger.
Yeah,
It actually is square footage-wise, if you look at it that way.
and that comes out to about 83 square feet.
Right.
Does the sign need to be this big? Is there some purpose for it aside from?
Well, it needs to be that height-wise because it looks like it fits in the window mullion. That's why the total height is. And then to put AFC, we wanted to just make it a little bit more special than putting a little AFC right next to fitness. So that's how we did that. But the height of the whole rectangle, the reason we did that is, well, first of all, that's what was existing. And we're pretty much just replacing what was there.
The pages that I'm passing, 6 and.
Those are shop
There's
drawings.
a specification. So I'm going to show you page 8 of 16. Is that the sign that we talked about that's on the other side of that wing wall?
Yes.
Okay. And again, the design is pretty self-explanatory. Correct?
Yes.
It mimics the other sign.
Right. And this is pretty much right. You already said this is pretty much the only sign you see when you come in, pretty much the main entrance of the building. This is what you would see first. So unless you drove around that whole wall there to try to find it, you don't see anything else for this gym except that sign.
So my understanding is we require a variance to have 2 signs. One sign, we require a variance from the size of the first sign we talked about and a variance for the second sign. On page 9 of 16, is that that shows the dimensions of that panel?
Yes, sir.
So it's 2 by,
2 by 8 foot 11.
okay, and that's boxing the entire
Yes.
area. And that works out to,
Well, it's about 18 square feet. Drop under.
yeah, I think we said it's a little bit less than that, but it's about that. And again, there's a more detailed calculation on page 10 of 16, is that correct?
Yes.
And on 11 of 16, is that a calculation that just takes into account the lettering?
Yes.
And that works out to 9.75 square feet.
Right. The lettering. Yes.
Are these signs, in your opinion, consistent with the design and size and scope of this location? And this building?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And, I mean, it was 15 years, there's been signs there for, I think it's almost 15 years, the same signs. Like I said, they just didn't have their letters over the door. So we're not really we didn't feel we were making too much of a change, just except putting the letters over the front door as opposed to on the side of the door.
Okay. There are other signs, and they're shown on your documents. There are other signs on this property that are directional signs and monument signs, is that correct?
Yes, they're landlord-provided signs. We just put the vinyl on for their directional signs.
Okay, so my understanding, you're just replacing another, the signs are already there, they're existing, you're just replacing
Right,
that.
exactly right.
Yeah. And that's all the questions I have.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. Good. Just a couple questions for you. First, you had noted that there are other municipalities that calculate the square footage of the sign as basically squaring off or inscribing the farthest reaches of the sign within a square, right?
Some, right, exactly. You know, some do, some don't.
Okay.
Some just take, you know, like I said before, some just take, you know, the letters and don't worry about a full background because the true square footage is the letters, but some say it doesn't matter if that background was twice the size of that, that's still considered sign square footage.
Right. And did you review the Radnor zoning ordinance before you designed the sign?
Yes.
Okay. And you'd agree that Radnor describes it just that way
Yes.
as the area of the sign is the area of the sign inscribed within a
Right.
square?
Yes.
Okay. And you had indicated that previously there was a sign, a conforming sign at the site?
Well, I don't know if it was conforming. I mean, there was a sign there. Whether it was conforming or whether they permitted it before that, I don't know.
Okay, so,
But there were signs there.
okay. Smaller as far as you know?
Well, the one is the exact same size.
Okay.
And the other one, I think ours is bigger because we're putting our letters over the front door on a longer wall as opposed to the side wall.
Okay. All right. That's all I have.
Board members, any questions?
I have a question. So I don't know if it's dark blue or black, whatever the background of. Why are we excluding that from the measurement?
What, this piece here?
Not the side, well, even just the main sign itself. It's got a background to it,
Well, we're not.
correct?
We're not. We're putting it all in there. What I'm saying is, I guess there's a couple of different ways you could do that, but we, like he said from the township, we're figuring the whole thing in
But
our
that,
numbers.
that blue rectangular background is part of the sign, right?
When you say blue, I mean this background here?
Yeah,
Yes.
whatever
Yeah,
the letters are
and we're
floating
considering
on.
that in our footage. Yes.
We're only considering each segment of it in your footage, right?
No, originally that's what we were doing, and now we're not. Now we're considering the whole thing. That's what we have to do.
And I've
Originally,
lost track.
we wanted to just square off the things, and we can't do that. So now we're figuring the square footage is the whole rectangle, including the letters.
Okay.
Yes.
And what's the total square footage then of the sign over the door?
Well, by my calculation, okay, so this total square footage, it depends on how you measure it. But I can hand this up, and this is the calculation I did, and it's self-evident. It comes from the document itself. So if we look at the sign itself, square the AFC, and take the rest of the sign, it's 64.35 square feet.
Can I ask a question?
I don't think I understand.
Yeah,
that
me neither. Are you agreeing that the zoning officer calculated it properly in accordance with the township code? Excuse me, let me finish my question before you answer it, okay? Are you agreeing with the township zoning officer in his calculation now and just going with the request for variance, or what?
Well, I think I will amend my application and just request the variance. I did, and as I said, I included an appeal from his determination, basically to cover all bases. But I agree that it's a reasonable interpretation of the code to say you take the largest area and square it. What we're arguing is that in this case, you're coming to pretty much the same thing. You're coming to a conforming size sign because the actual area of the sign is just slightly larger than 60 square feet. And if we needed to make it 60 square feet, we would do that. We're about 64 square feet now. But using the zoning officer's calculation, you're including area that's outside of the actual sign itself because it says take the highest point and the lowest point, square it off at the ends, and that's how you measure it, and that's where he is now.
You are disputing his method of calculation.
I'm saying that the code says that's what you do. Now, does the code allow for a
Sounds like
different
a limited
interpretation,
modified
a different way of
hangout.
doing it? Yeah, maybe I'm hedging my bets here, but, I'm not saying that he's wrong, but I'm saying there's another way to look at it. What the code says, it says, for purposes of this chapter, sign area shall be computed as a square or rectangle drawn at the outer limits of the sign face. So I think that's what the zoning officer did. He took it at the outer limits of the sign face, though the question is, what are the outer limits and how far do you go with it? There's a reasonable argument that you look at the outer limits of the sign face and just take the dimensions of the sign itself. If you do that, I think we're pretty close.
I'm gonna try to say it differently. I think, based on what the interpretation of the township is in doing the outer limits and making a rectangle, what you're arguing is, well, that includes a lot of blank space.
It does.
That doesn't have any sign on it. It's just the back glass wall. It has nothing to do with the sign. So by that calculation, you're saying, well, that's kind of not fair, because you're including all this blank space. Now, if your calculation is correct, I think what you're doing is you're taking the whole rectangle, and you're just taking the basic rectangle, not the outer limits, and you're adding some space in the middle there for those bigger letters to
Right,
get
we're-
to that 64.
We're basically taking three rectangles, the rectangle on the left,
Yeah, and
rectangle on
that gets
the
you to
right.
64, so you're still over, but,
It's still over.
so it's, I think the township's calculation was 83. Your revised calculation is now 64.
Yes.
Right.
All right. So I don't know if that helps or hurts, but I think that's what we're talking about.
I think
Can-
I'd like somebody to just walk me through the math, because
Well,
Can I
My
confirm one
calculator's
thing
not
before we
helping
start
me.
the math, Rich? I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I'm looking at page 1 of 16, the front door. The portion of the sign that's in, I'm going to call it dark blue, that may be incorrect, but the portion of the sign that's on the left side there that is not facing, yes, that's correct. That's included in the calculations?
no, that's not. That's the back of the other sign, the second sign.
Okay.
There's nothing there.
But it just happens to flow naturally with the design of the sign that we're looking at?
It does, yeah.
Yes, if you look at the other page, that's the back of the other sign.
Right.
Or the sign that's up on the glass.
Yeah. It's a two-sided sign, is what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay,
But
that's-
it wasn't even used as a two-sided, was it two-sided
No,
with them
it's-
before? Right, the PFC was in the back, right? We're not using the back of that sign now.
Yeah, it's one-sided, and the code says, sign area includes the area of all lettering, wording, and accompanying designs and symbols, together with the background on which they were displayed, but excluding any supporting frame. I'm sorry. Yeah. The code says the sign area is the area of all lettering, wording, and accompanying designs and symbols, together with the background on which they are displayed, but excluding any supporting framework and bracing which are solely incidental to the display itself. So we didn't include that blank space because it doesn't have any lettering, wording, or accompanying designs or symbols. It's basically the back of the other sign.
Yeah,
It's not a two-faced sign because it's only on the one side.
Right.
Well, it's interesting because,
But did it have to be that color?
It has to be a color other than clear because there's a sign on the other side, so it makes
Okay.
sense to make
So
it part of the same.
it's coincidental that it's the color of the
I
rest of
don't,
the sign?
I think it
Well,
was
it just
designed-
makes more sense to have the, because it is all, it goes in an L, so, I mean, yeah, it could be any color, but I mean, what color would, I think it would look funny if you would make it another color.
but I'm looking at the language in the ordinance, and not that it's the greatest ordinance in the world, but it says, when both sides are not identical, which is what we have, you have to consider both faces in calculating total sign area.
But when we say, but I
Which-
think that,
which makes
the
no
way I
sense
would
to me,
read that is
but-
identical, if it has no copy, you can't consider it a sign, there's no copy, it's just, there's
I
no
think
difference
that's the
between that
better
or a
argument.
wall.
I think that's the better argument. Yeah. All right, so I think your position is that sidebar in the front is not part of sign one.
Yes, sir.
That
Yes,
your
that's correct.
position.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to circle back. 22.8 by 2 feet,
Let me hand this up, and this is.
divided by 144, right?
This may confuse you more, but. Because,
Yeah, I have this.
So I get 45 square feet.
I'm
This is
sorry,
why I'm asking,
I
what's,
ran out
how do you
here.
get to 64?
I ran out, I'm one short. So, if you look at the second page, and this is drawn from the exhibit, it's just math. And what makes it more difficult, obviously, is when you're squaring feet and inches, you basically calculate the inches and divide by 144. Yeah, when you're calculating feet and inches, you take the inches in total, multiply them together, and then divide by 144, which is 1 square foot, to come out back to square footage. So on sign 1, the sign over the door, if we square the AFC, which is 22, well, you take the sign, 272 inches by 44. 44 is the height, and 272 is the length. You come out to 83 square feet, which is what the zoning officer calculated. If you use the method that the applicant has put forth on the exhibit, you just take the letters and the logo, you box those, and you come out with 39.9 square feet. If we square each element, in other words, take the AFC, and that's applicant's method 2, which is 44 inches high by 90.5 inches long, hold on, as to each element, I'm sorry, you come out to 64.35 square feet. So we take the AFC, that's 27.6 square feet. The other areas on both sides, that comes out to 36.75. That's where we get the 64.35 square feet. So the actual area of the sign itself, by my calculation, and I'm a lawyer, but I think I can do math, it comes out to 64.35 square feet. If you remove the chrome border, it's 58.56 square feet. So that's where we see the difference here. If we take the actual area of the sign, we're at 64 square feet. We'd bring it down to 60 square feet if we need to do that, if that's a condition. But
I have a question. I guess if we're, maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but if we're asking just for a variance of the whole thing, whether it's 60 or 70, I mean, it's pretty much the design is really what we're asking for. Whether it's 80 square feet or 60, I don't know whether that's that much of a difference. Maybe I'm wrong, and I think it's more the design and whether you guys are going to approve the look of this, whether, I mean, it's a variance, whether it's 1 square foot over or 50 square feet over.
I mean, there's a hardship requirement, but in any event, if you were to take the AFC, I'm looking at 4 of 16, and shrink that down so that it fit inside the sign. I mean, maybe it went from chrome border to chrome border. I mean, wouldn't you be in compliance? At
No.
60 square feet approximately?
we'd be pretty close, but why don't you want to do that?
Well, I mean, the looks-wise of this, but are we considering the other sign too, though?
Yeah.
Right, so in other words, we still would be over our square footage if you have, for both signs, because you have the sign up on the glass.
But what would be the reason not to shrink the AFC?
Well, you could shrink it. I mean, there's no, except that this is just, just size-wise and the way this looks with his logo, we just think this is just a nicer design.
Yeah,
That's why.
And to make an argument here from a zoning standpoint.
Yeah, keep your voice up.
Yeah, I'm
okay?
sorry,
You're
I'm sorry,
drifting
yeah.
off from the microphone. There you go.
To make an argument from a zoning standpoint, the reason that we're looking at the actual size of the sign and comparing it to the code requirement of 60 square feet and comparing it also to the way that the code measures it, when we're looking at a variance, one standard is a de minimis variance. So there's an argument to say, here we have a sign that if we made it into a square or used some other design, we would meet the code requirement or come pretty close to the 60 square foot code requirement. It's just a way that the sign is organized. And when I was speaking with his brother, who's also his partner, he said, you know, for Toys R Us, they had a standard sign and it included a giraffe. And they got rid of that because they ran into the same issue with other codes. So from the standpoint of a variance, it's a de minimis variance. Also, when you look at a Herzberg standard, there's a practical hardship. Are there factors that allow for a lesser hardship for a dimensional variance under Herzberg than for a use variance? And again, the argument is we're pretty close here in terms of the code, and it's a more attractive sign than perhaps could be done otherwise. And that's why we're asking for the size variance on that sign. We're asking for a variance for the second sign, one, because it was there before, but also because there was a sign there before, but also because of the conditions of this property that make it difficult to locate this. And again, it's a large building, and one thing I didn't put in, but it's one of the exhibits, is that the building doesn't come close to the maximum signage allowed by the code. And there's a calculation in there, but the zoning officer has come to the opinion that there's 300 feet of frontage on this building. That's 450 square feet of signs, and the existing signs are about 177 square feet. So we're under the.
Right, that's kind of how we looked at it when we did it. We tried to make it just more than even trying to get to a certain size. We wanted to make it look right first, because it's not like we were trying to get to 10 square feet or 30 square feet. We had to make it look right and then come in for the variance and say, look, this is what we think looks the nicest, and we're over either way. We're going to be over.
I think it would be helpful for me actually to go through this math at least once. And
Yeah,
I
I know.
apologize, but let's go to page 4. And I'm counting the gray border of that rectangle size sign.
Right.
So that would be 2 feet 5 inches wide.
Right.
All right?
29 inches, yeah.
2 feet 5 inches wide by 22 feet 8 inches.
Right.
The height, the first height and the next width. So if you multiply those two numbers, I get 54. Does anybody else get that?
The
George?
sign that you calculated,
Uh,
I calculated it being,
2 inches, 2 feet 5 inches.
George, I went through it.
now you have to add the border, which adds another 5 inches to it, so.
No.
George,
2 feet 5 inches, including the border.
That includes the
George.
border.
Yes, John?
I just went through this, and you know I'm an engineer, not a lawyer.
I trust you explicitly.
Where have you been?
So anyway, I came up with 64.2 square feet.
I'm not counting the AFC sign. Pretend the AFC sign is not there. I'm just counting the box.
Yeah, I mean, but
Well,
I did it, calculate the AFC sign, and then,
No.
if
Forget, take AFC off the table. Pretend it's not there.
Right.
Just take the rectangle,
yeah,
and I'm getting 54 inches. If you just take the rectangle, don't ignore AFC. Just take the whole rectangle.
well, that's fine. I'm just saying.
Okay.
The way they're proposing to calculate it, there are 3 pieces,
I know what they're doing.
and then the AFC. And when I calculate that, I come up with 64.
Okay, got it.
yeah,
Understood.
another way,
So if my math was correct, for example, if we proposed, just squish that AFC sign down to within that rectangle, you'd be okay. You wouldn't.
Be what, under,
You
yeah.
wouldn't, yeah. All right, that was what I was trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, he would still need a variance, though, for the second sign.
You would still need a
Okay.
variance for a second sign, agreed.
if you,
Agreed. Okay.
and to follow up on that, so what I did is I took the length of the sign, which is 22 feet 8, which comes out to 272 inches, multiplied that by the height of the sign, which is 29 inches, and divided that by 144, I came out with 54.77 square feet.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, okay, so we're on the same track. The
Okay.
AFC, which is, an attractive element, and that's what we really are looking at here. The AFC adds another, my phone went out, but the AFC adds another 10 square feet. Yeah. Mhm.
Got
To the
it.
total.
And just something else, that would, if we did have to shrink that down, that would definitely, we wouldn't be able to do these type of letters. We would have to change that, because this is a very cool letter. I don't know if you really care, but, it's a halo, and then it's another, if you can see all the dimension on this, there's a lot of, so when you make that type of a letter too small, we couldn't make it that way. So you have to have at least a little bit of some size to make a letter that fancy.
Understood.
So you may go back to the drawing board at that point.
Right. So I would have to shrink, it would pretty much just look like the word fitness, the AFC, and that's sort of not their logo and doesn't.
So I'm sorry, I just want to clarify so that I understand what we're doing. The second sign that's on that wall facing, I don't know what direction that is.
The front
East,
side, right.
south, yeah.
Facing south.
That sign requires a variance altogether.
Because it's a second sign.
Because it's a second sign.
Not
I
because
got
of size.
Right.
you. And that one most certainly provides some aid in direction and
Oh, yeah.
locating this.
Sure, because that's really more the front. When you come in that building, that's what you see. It's just pretty much, after you see that, where do you go? Most people that come in here, we've seen, are going in the front door of that building. And they're saying, nope, that's not the gym, go around the side. So it's tricky no matter what to get in here.
I don't know if design-wise you can do this. If there was no dark blue background at all, if it was just logo and letters,
Well, you couldn't, because that's a window there. So we're covering over that. That's the whole idea. We're trying to make that look like it's part of the building. So that's what he was saying before. If we just did the letters, or just took a big rectangular background, stacked it all, put it up on the building, it's just pretty much a bigger, uglier sign, but we would be with the right square footage.
but would it change, right, would it change the calculations at that point?
Oh, yes, it would, yeah. Because I could get the sign smaller, just the way this lays out. We're using more square footage than if I were to stack it. Because, the way you were squaring everything, so if it was just AFC, fitness underneath it, and the logo, or the logo AFC, it's definitely smaller.
All right, last question from me. Other than aesthetics, is there an argument for why we should grant the variance
Well, like
with
I say,
respect to the
it's-
larger AFC?
It's de minimis, and there's a practical hardship in the sense that this entrance is set back, you need to have more visibility. And like I said, there was an existing sign there. Our argument basically is, this is pretty similar, or pretty much in compliance with an alternative interpretation of the code, albeit one that's different from the way the township has calculated this in the past. It's a sign that's basically the same size as allowed, but it's just oriented in a different way. And like Mr. Jacobson says, to make it a square is less appealing, and probably is going to cause it to go above the height requirement, though I'm not sure about that. So, you can always make a sign. We could make a sign that's smaller. We can make a sign that's larger. We can make a sign without internally illuminated letters. But this is the design that my client would like, and it's an attractive design. And really,
It's really not that big. It's not, and I guess as far as if we're asking for a variance, like I said, if it's what's the difference between a certain size in the variance at that point? Well, we agree, well, if you guys agree that, that the sign's classy and it fits that wall, that's pretty much how we came up with this size.
So, 60 square feet, and this is 64 square feet, we make it 60 square feet, so that's what we're proposing.
Okay, any other questions, board members? Will, do you have any further questions, comments? Any final thoughts?
No, I think we've covered everything. I don't have other arguments. I think we are where we are.
So just to be clear, I think we're we're actually voting on two requests here. The first is a variance from the size limit on sign 1, and number 2, a variance for the very existence of sign 2.
That's
I
my
don't think
understanding.
we have to determine whether the township acted correctly or not.
Yes.
I don't see that.
And in fact, it's on the record that you've modified your request to eliminate that. request.
That's correct, and that's where we are.
Okay. I would like to address the sign 1 question first, and that would be the variance from the 60 square foot limitation set forth in the ordinances. Anyone, we do have we have 5 voting members. John Nagel, so you won't be voting. Yeah. So anyone would like to make a motion regarding the first issue?
Can I just say something before you do that?
Sure.
I don't, I see these as tied together, both of these signs, because it seems to me that the sign over the entrance, this is the one that's on the front page here, 1 of 16.
Sign 1.
Sign 1 is, the way I've gotten the story here, that they base their hardship on, that people aren't going to be able to see that big sign over the door until they see this sign that's sign 2. So sign 2 is the guide sign, if you will, the sign that's going to direct people towards where you go to get into this place and find out, okay, it's at this area of this larger building that sits there. It seems to me that what's actually over the door is secondary. Sign 1 is really secondary. I don't see why, under the circumstances, and I don't see hardship here, is if we grant anything, it's got to be because it's just de minimis. Then they should squeeze the, not squeeze it, but redo the sign. We got some creative people here. They make a living designing these signs. And they should be able to design a sign that's going to be within the calculation in the manner in which the township does these calculations, which they seem to concede is okay. This other sign, sign 2, I think that's the one where there's, I think maybe it's possible to modify this, but to me, that's the primary sign. And if they can shrink down the sign that's over the doorway, I think I can see myself understanding that, okay, there's a situation here where somebody needs to make sure they find the building. Sign 2 takes care of that. Once you're there, I mean, you're there. I don't really see really don't see much, any hardship here, to tell you the truth. I really don't.
Well, I think that's part of the discussion, but thank you for that, John. But I think just to kind of frame this discussion, I think we still have to do those. I would like to see those separate motions. I think it would make the most sense just to make it possible to write an opinion on this or a result. I will ask again for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that with respect to sign, what we are referring to as sign 1, that a variance from the 60-foot limitation in section 280-123 be granted on a de minimis basis based on the slight excess size of sign 1 from the requirement that is in 280-123.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a second. Discussion.
Although I won't be voting, I support this motion. I believe you have to consider the fact that you actually come around that building from either side. So the sign 2 is if you're coming from the north, I guess that would be, and sign 1 is coming the other direction. Plus, it's a nice looking sign. There are no neighbors other than the other businesses. It's not viewed from Lancaster Avenue. So any impact to the community is minimal, and it is de minimis.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Nagel's comments there. Certainly it can be argued that you can get at this this location from 3 or more directions, depending on where you're coming in. If you're coming in Radnor Chester or either of the Lancaster entrances, you've got 3 different ways of getting at this building. So I understand Mr. Lord's point with respect to sign 2, and we'll talk about sign 2, I suspect, in a couple minutes. But it's not an easy location necessarily to find, although I would note for the record that the walls are glass. So once you see exercise equipment from the parking lot, I think you have a pretty good idea that you might be where you want to be. But I think it's tucked away and needs a little wayfinding. And while sign 2 is not necessarily a wayfinding sign, it serves the same purpose. But I'm in support of my own motion. But I guess everybody knew that.
Any other comments?
I think the only, I don't know if it's more of a question to John than a comment, but what are you calculating the de minimis aspect of the motion on?
My impression from the testimony in the record is that the sign area is approximately 64 square feet. So we're really, the delta is that extra 4. They're permitted 60 under, 280-123. And, as Mr. Nagel pointed out, it's an attractive sign. And, I don't know that the juice is worth the squeeze in terms of tinkering with it to get it to 60. So that's where I am.
Any other comments? Well, I think, kind of one thing we're not addressing is it 64 or is it 83? If it's 83, is it de minimis? Not sure. I'm given the benefit of the doubt here that it's 64. I think, de minimis exception sometimes works both ways, and I think in this case it does. I think they could easily make changes. Well, it wouldn't be, it doesn't appear to be a substantial undertaking to get within 60 feet if we're assuming that we're at 64 now. And worst case, we're talking about 83, and then I don't think it's de minimis. So I'm not going to vote in favor of the motion, but that's where I am. So any other discussion?
I agree with that because I think I'm unclear on what can be done because I do believe that the hardship rule still applies and that I think the sign can be altered to bring it down into compliance or very near compliance so that we're not sitting here guessing, well, is it 62, is it 64, maybe it's 80-something. That's why I'm going to vote against it.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we'll have a vote. John Lord, in favor of the motion is to grant the de minimis exception.
I would vote no.
Okay, Rich?
No.
John?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
And I'm also voting no. So that's 3-2, the motion has failed. So there's no relief on sign 1. The next issue
Mr.
regards.
I'd like to make a motion that the applicant be granted the relief requested from section 280-123 upon the basis of the showing of a hardship as opposed to a de minimis variance.
Any second?
I'll second it.
Discussion?
I don't see where the hardship is because they can conform. We haven't seen, they haven't demonstrated that they more or less admitted they can do that. It might be a little inconvenient, but inconvenience doesn't equal hardship. It's how I feel. I think they can advertise what they're doing. I think they have a good-looking sign here, and they can do it without having to violate the code. I just don't see where there's any hardship here. I really don't, and that's.
Any other discussion? I think on this one, I think, as you can see from A2, and you know, I'm personally familiar with it, where you come up to the front of that building, you cannot tell if that's a gym. Yes, at some time of day, you can see through the windows and see machines, but that's not all the time. There's actually an intersection there, and most of the traffic flow is turning right to go up through the parking lot, so they would never even see the front sign. So the only sign you'd be able to see from where most of the traffic's coming, which we got testimony on, would be that side sign. So I think there is a hardship based on the structure of that building sticking out like it does and blocking your view from that side. So I'm going to vote in favor.
Maybe I misunderstood John's motion. I thought you were recasting the motion for the sign number 1.
This is a motion on sign 1.
Okay, all right. I was just wanted to be
All right,
clear
then I'm
about that.
confused.
We're talking,
There can be multiple motions on the same request, assuming differing bases for relief.
we're still on sign, we're still on sign 1.
We're still on sign 1.
I apologize, my mistake. So can you repeat your motion for me, please?
The motion is to grant the applicant the relief requested from 280-123 on the basis of the showing of an unnecessary hardship.
As opposed to a de minimis exception.
That's correct.
Got it. Thank you. All right, I'm catching up.
You know, I think somebody once said that, and I would never accuse anybody, especially myself, that consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. Well, consequently, I mean, if there's not a de minimis, if it doesn't satisfy the de minimis standards, then I don't see how we can talk about hardship.
No, de minimis variance doesn't require hardship. That de minimis is de minimis. It doesn't require the showing of an unnecessary hardship. We're moving to the next layer,
Okay.
a higher standard of.
Yeah, a higher standard, you're correct. I understand that, okay.
So the issue, I tried to make it easy on ourselves, but, you know, the de minimis variance doesn't require hardship at all. And now the motion is to grant the variance upon the customary showing of an unnecessary hardship.
Yeah, I like the sign, and I just think that you're asking for a bit too much, and that's why I'm in opposition to this. It seems to me that they could shrink the letters a couple of inches. I'm a lawyer, I'm not a mathematician. It took me a long time to figure out how to calculate square feet tonight. But it strikes me that a couple inches on each side of that AFC, and you're in a sweet spot. Maybe you do hit the de minimis mark and you're back in front of us, but I don't see that sign as being catered towards the minimum relief necessary. And so I'll be voting against that motion as well. No.
Yes?
Brad? Yes. And I am also voting no, so it's 3-2 to
I'll make a motion for sign 2, that we grant the relief requested for a variance for the second sign. I don't know if I phrased that properly, but.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a problem with this one, and it's, I know this is going to sound like I'm dreaming this up, but if we grant this relief for sign 2, for purposes of the zoning code, that's their sign, and the next sign requires a variance. Because under 280-123, they're permitted one wall sign not to exceed 60 square feet. If we grant them the relief on this, they have a sign. And in theory, I'm not even sure they need relief at this point, because they don't have a sign. And I don't recall there being testimony in the record that the sign 2 exceeds 60 feet. So theoretically, they don't, sign 1 no longer exists as far as we're concerned.
Well, to your point then.
John, can I finish, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were.
So sign 1 does not exist now, and all they have is sign 2. Doesn't mean that they have to actually affix sign 2 if we were to grant the relief. But all they would have is sign 2. They're not going to do sign 2 without sign 1 in some form or fashion. So I think we need to think about the procedural predicament we might be causing the applicant. I suspect that the applicant will not, even if they get the relief for sign 2, they will not proceed with it, because then the second sign requires a variance. And I don't care if it's 45, 60, 80, 100 feet. It's not going to be de minimis. And they've already heard us comment on the existence or non-existence of a hardship here.
Right.
So I think it's problematic, getting, in a somewhat strange way, getting around, John, to your point, that the two are inextricably linked,
Yep.
but
Yep.
for different reasons.
Yeah, I see where you're going. That's a really interesting point. I mean, this has really been presented to us as a package. So knocking one of them out of the ring, I think, knocks the other one out to the point where they've got to come back again totally on both issues.
Yeah, the reason I would disagree with that is, right now, we're in a situation where they're gonna put up a sign, let's assume it's in compliance with zoning laws, and they're not gonna have to come back to us. Sign 1, they're gonna put that up, it's gonna be in compliance. So that's one sign for the business. The issue that we're talking about is the ordinance that says each business shall be permitted one sign, okay? So they have their one sign, it's 60 square feet, they don't need our permission. Now, they want another sign. That's what they're asking for now. So I think you're kind of spinning in circles a bit, John. And I think it's simple as that. They just need permission for a second sign.
Or permission to have 2 signs that are in compliance with the area
Yes.
They
requirements
need
of the code.
permission for a second sign, but when we consider that request, we have to consider what sign it is. I'm assuming that they
Well,
won't go forward
The second
with
sign, yeah, the second sign is gonna be over, when you add them together, it's gonna be over 60 feet. Yeah. So.
Well, it doesn't matter what the size of the second sign is, because you're permitted one sign.
I think we're making this much more complicated than it needs to be. That's my opinion.
It sounds like we're really not doing them any favors. It should be that they may want to retreat, rethink this, redesign it, take a second look at what they want to do about the signs, whether it's one sign or 2 signs, come back and see us. But I see your point, John.
What would they
but
be
it's-
asking
it is-
for differently than they're asking now? They're asking for a second sign. And that we have to make that decision.
Right, but they don't have a first sign. They don't have a first sign.
They don't have a variance for a first sign. That's not saying they don't have a first sign. They
Well,
don't need a
this first sign
variance.
became
If they
the-
put up a sign that meets all the
became-
rules, they don't
the
even need
second
to
sign
talk to
became
us.
the
That
first
doesn't
sign
mean it's not a
when nobody
second
was
sign.
looking.
For my.
Yeah, I mean, this is metaphysical. I'm going to grant you that.
Yeah,
But
the idea here is not to create a procedural dilemma. I understand what your thinking is, John, and that's definitely not the intention. I mean, in terms of discussion, I don't think we're quite there, but this directional sign seems of utmost importance to the business because of all the factors that we heard, that it's tucked behind and faces the opposite direction of Lancaster Avenue and all of those things that we heard. So.
I have a question for the solicitor. Can we impose a condition on perhaps the grant of relief for sign 2 by conditioning our approval on the applicant constructing a compliant first sign?
Well, that was what I was trying to suggest, was that you grant the applicant, maybe another slight variation in Mr. Weitzman's motion, that you're granting the variance request for 2 signs, conditioned upon the area of each sign being within compliance with the code. So you're allowing them to have 2 as long as they're in the area of those 2 signs is within the area permitted under the code, which is 60 square feet. Which I believe is what the township's position is that if the area of the 2 signs is 60 square feet, that's why the township doesn't have a problem with there being 2 signs, as long as far as the township was concerned, the total area of the 2 signs combined was 60 square feet.
Right. I guess my concern there was, I don't want to put words in the applicant's.
That substantially shrinks sign 1.
I saw that coming, but I don't agree with that. I think the second sign variance would be for a sign that's the size of the second sign, but the first sign or the second sign is a variance for a second sign of the same as presented in this hearing. The first sign, it wouldn't be a combination of, the relief would not be that the 2 signs would have to be no more than 60 feet.
The relief
in
you're
total.
asking that, each sign presumably could be 60 square feet.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, got it.
Mr. Chairman, the zoning officer would like to be heard.
Yes.
Sure. So in terms of sign 1 being 60 square feet as sign 1, and then sign 2 being another wall sign, a second wall sign, which is what they're asking relief for, I wouldn't have a problem with that if sign 2 is as proposed tonight. Because I hadn't had a chance to look at a second 60 square foot sign, look at the impact of that, and then put that in front of the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners may have had a different thought on sending the solicitor to oppose a second 60 square foot wall sign. But if we're talking about sign 2 being the size as they've shown tonight, I wouldn't take any exception to that, granted that sign 1 would be a compliant 60 square foot sign.
Well, what they've requested, they do have the dimensions of sign 2, and it's about 17 square feet or so.
Sure. But I wouldn't want to see a second wall sign be another 60 square feet.
Understood.
That would be,
Yeah.
I think, something I would want to take back in front of the commissioners.
That's why I think we're engaging a little bit of field engineering here that doesn't always work out very well. And that's why I initially thought we should reject the, they can always come back, reject it reject the second sign also, so that they can get back, and Kevin's got a chance to take it to the commissioners and see what can be done based on a slightly altered design. That might achieve the purpose. We're struggling with this because we're trying to fit square pegs into round holes, and it's not working out for us.
I think it doesn't serve any useful purpose to have the applicant come back and make the case for the second sign. I think they
What else are they going to say? We want a second sign.
Yeah, but they'd still have to go through the whole process that they went through this evening with respect to establishing we would look at the second sign as it's proposed, as it's presented in a subsequent proceeding. I mean, we're all assuming it's the same sign, and I think that it's reasonable to make that assumption. But, I just don't see why they should have to come back and establish the need for the second sign again.
Matthew, you're dying to speak, so I'll go.
I just wanted to say, we're opening on Monday, and we would obviously prefer not to come back here. And, I'm near $6 million into this club, coming out of COVID, trying to get this open. It's a health and fitness facility. I think it's good for the community. It's good for the neighborhood. I don't think there's nobody else back there but Lincoln Financial who's supporting this, looking at us. So for the extra 4 or 6 square feet or whatever, and I understand the rules and respect that, that's all we're asking. And, I appreciate everybody's time and doing their jobs, but, I've put my whole heart, soul, life savings into this, and we're creating jobs and we're bringing people into the neighborhood, and I just really don't think that this is a type of business or something that's really going to bother anybody. And so, I just plead with you in some sense, there was a reason that we used those letters. They are three-dimensional. If you shrink them down into the fascia, they cannot be. As we said, we backlit them on purpose. It's not shining any other light on any other person. And, I invite you all to come in and, to the fitness center, but you're going to walk in there and be really wowed. And your first impression is your best impression. And so just because of the design of the building and the way the fascia was and the way that it fit in, that's kind of how that black border is that. But I just would really appreciate it if you would kind of reconsider while we're here now and figure out a way to get this done. So,
Thank you, Matthew.
yes, thank you.
It was my motion, but I'm hesitant to limit sign 1, because again, I think they could achieve something close to either, de minimis, what I would consider de minimis. So by voting in favor of sign 2, or the motion to allow for sign 2, that's tied to a sign that's 60 square feet, or code compliant, I guess, right? I don't know if I'm comfortable doing that.
All right, so the motion is to approve request for variance to have a second sign. Further discussion?
I'm really not sure what the motion's all about, to tell you the truth, at this point. I know I seconded it, but after the conversation we just had,
It's just for the approval of the relief for sign 2.
okay, I'll vote for it. Yes.
Rich?
Aye.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion passes 5-0. You're approved for the second sign. Good luck with your project and good luck with your opening.
Mr. Chairman, would you consider another motion to reconsider the grant of the relief for sign 1? I mean, I'd need a second. I don't know if I could find one. I mean, I think about some of the relief that we grant on this board. And I suspect that we have granted similar types of requests where there have been no neighboring objections to the relief. The orientation of this sign, it's been pointed out, is to the occupants of an office park, and the train tracks, I suppose.
So you're asking for a rehearing?
I'm petitioning for reconsideration.
Yes, I know.
Sorry, let's not overlook the fact that across from
Well,
this.
John, actually, can I interrupt you, Brad? John, can you put
No,
your
just
motion
hear me,
more
hear me.
precisely? Just so we have a motion out here, and we need a second.
I would,
25 words or less.
it's got to be different than the two that have already been shot down. Give me a minute. I would move that the applicant be granted relief from the 60 square foot requirement of 280-123 to construct the sign as described in the plans and testimony presented this evening on the basis.
Is there a second?
I'm not
Yes.
even going to say why.
Second, yes. Yep. Yes.
It's a motion, it's not an argument.
And again, I just want to remind the board that across the street from this particular building, we have a series of retail shops. Each one of them has come in front of us to get variance relief. Not only, I'm going to say even sign square footage, but always sign height. And our biggest concern was how bad will this look from the street? And this thing isn't even viewable from the street. The only people that are going to see this sign are the people walking in. And if there's ever a unique aspect to this property, that's it. You want your hardship, there it is. I mean, imagine having an entrance that's in a basement, and you're going, that's not unique? I mean, that's kind of what this is. Buildings' entrances are usually in the front. This one's in the back, on the ground floor, or in a sub-basement. That's the hardship. And to me, again, there's no one here objecting. If a tree falls in the woods. Again, this entrance is unique. And I understand what they're going at. I get signs, I really do. And I'm the first one saying, I denied the Penn sign because I thought it was not in accordance with what the township wanted and what the neighbors want. And the ordinance, where you said you couldn't even have it. Here it's just, that's the hardship. It's the location. It's not directional. It's just a matter of it's facing one person, and that's the person coming in.
To Brad's point, similarly, we approved the Lincoln Financial sign on that building, partly because it was open air. I kind of remember that discussion, even though it was oversized because of the squaring off. It was, I think it's, I don't know the proper term, but it's empty behind it. It's like the letter and the logo float, so to speak. So, but I mean, you're right. This building is, no question it's in the rear. No question it's a unique entrance. So I may have changed my mind.
Well, heaven forbid we're ever charged with having consistency in our rulings.
That's right. Let's call a vote. I'm feeling good. Let's call a vote.
We will call the vote. This is a reconsideration of the motion to approve the variance for sign 1. John Lord.
Aye.
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 I'm still opposed because I'm not sure if we're talking about 83 feet or 64 feet, but the motion passes 4-1. So congratulations, you get everything you asked for.
Thank you very much. Good luck with your project.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you.